You hear it often, don't you? That some of the greatest minds, especially composers, were completely misunderstood in their own time.
Right.
It's almost like a badge of honor for genius, you know? But why is that? What does it really tell us about, well, groundbreaking creativity?
Mm.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that question. We've been looking closely at the genius of original composition, and our mission really is to unpack what makes a composer truly great.
Especially when they weren't exactly met with applause at first.
Exactly, especially then.
What our readings from the Genius of Original Composition show pretty clearly, actually, is that this initial pushback, this lack of acceptance, it was almost always down to sheer unfamiliarity.
Familiarity, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't that the music was, bad. It was just
Exactly.
new. The musical forms, the harmonies, maybe even the whole emotional vibe was totally alien to people listening back then.
That makes sense. Like trying to explain, I don't know, a smartphone to someone who's only ever used a rotary phone.
That's a great analogy. The basic ideas, the foundations, just weren't there yet in the listeners' minds.
So these composers weren't just writing new tunes. They were basically inventing new kinds of musical language.
That's it exactly.
Who are some examples? Does the source mention specific composers where this really played out?
Oh, definitely. The material points to, well, the big ones, like Beethoven. His dramatic shifts, the intensity, it often just baffled audiences who expected something more, I guess, predictable.
Right, more structured.
Yeah. And then there's Brahms. His music was seen as like too dense, too complicated, maybe even muddy, some thought initially.
Okay.
And maybe the most famous example, Stravinsky. His Rite of Spring literally caused riots.
Riots. Yeah, I've heard about that.
Because those rhythms, the dissonant sounds, it wasn't just new, it was deeply unsettling. It broke, well, pretty much every rule people thought music had.
Wow. Okay, so if that initial resistance, that difficulty, is often tied to just being unfamiliar, what does this tell us about original composition itself? How does the source define that sort of key quality?
Well, the material is quite clear on this. Original composition isn't just, writing a catchy new melody.
It's more fundamental.
Much more. It's about rethinking the actual rules, structure, harmony, melody, even what emotions music can convey. It's really pushing the boundaries of what music is or what people think it is.
So also means creating something that doesn't quite fit, doesn't slot neatly into the boxes people already have.
Exactly. It's like a bold statement, and
Yeah.
whole new artistic vision being declared.
Which brings us to that really interesting contrast the source uses. Antonio Salieri, from the movie Amadeus.
Ah, yes. Salieri.
He was famous, right?
Yeah.
Celebrated in his time. Definitely skilled. So what did the source say about him compared to, say, a Mozart?
It's fascinating, actually. The text uses Salieri as a perfect example of someone who was a very good composer, technically brilliant, popular even. But, in the long view, not considered one of the world's truly great composers. And the reason? His work, while elegant and well-made, just wasn't original. It stuck very closely to the rules, the styles of his time. What he wrote sounded, well, pretty much like what everyone else was writing. He mastered the game, you could say, but he didn't change the rules.
And that's the implicit contrast with someone like Mozart. Even if some people didn't get Mozart at first, he absolutely had his own ideas.
Precisely. Mozart's melodies, his surprising harmonies, that incredible dramatic sense. It was often unsettling because it was so unique. So him,
He wasn't just following the playbook Salieri mastered.
not at all. He was writing a new one. That's the core difference we're talking about. Not just skill, but genuine innovation.
So for you listening, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The big lesson from the genius of original composition seems to be that true lasting greatness often comes from having your own ideas, from pushing beyond what everyone finds comfortable and familiar, and maybe, just maybe, embracing that initial confusion or resistance as potentially a sign that you're onto something truly new.
It's a powerful idea, absolutely. Not just for music, really, but for almost any field.
Definitely.
And this brings up, well, an important question for you to think about. How often do we, in our own lives, looking at art or science or anything, how often do we maybe overlook something or dismiss it at first just because it's original? Because it doesn't fit what we already know or expect.
That's a good question.
How open are you really to ideas that challenge you? It's worth considering, what does originality truly mean in whatever field you're passionate about? And how can you get better at spotting it, appreciating it, even when it feels a bit strange or uncomfortable initially?